War is a word whose name itself brings scenes of destruction in the eyes. Nothing else is visible except bombs, bullets, explosions, and devastation all around. But the war we are going to talk about today, in that war neither bullets were fired nor explosions took place. This was a war of ideas. Yes, it is true that this war of ideas destroyed many countries. They were torn into pieces, and this war came to be known as the Cold War. In this war, on one side was the USSR and on the other side was the United States of America. What was this Cold War? And why is this war seen as the most dangerous war in history? With the end of World War II, many big European empires drowned and two superpowers of the world emerged. One of these was the USSR and the other was the United States of America. Even though both the countries were allies during the World War, but immediately after the end of the war a new war broke out between these two countries. This was a war of ideas and economic policies. On one hand, USSR wanted to promote communism all over the world. On the other hand, America's sole aim was that capitalism should dominate every country in the world. In this mutual rivalry between these two countries, they did not lose much, but many countries of the world, including Asia, had to bear the brunt of this war. In this war, America and USSR never came face to face against each other with weapons, but due to the War of the Poor People, this war was named Cold War. In 1930, Joseph Stalin took the power of USSR in his hands. After this, in November 1933, American President Franklin D. Roosevelt wanted to improve his relations with the Soviet Union, for which he sent Ambassador William Bullitt to Moscow. But his experience with Moscow was not good, after which a rift was created in the relations between US and Soviet. At the same time, USSR was expanding its territory by continuously invading many countries and at the same time strengthening its forces, due to which US started feeling threatened by the Soviet Union. 1940 was the time of the Second World War, and at that time the three most powerful countries, US, Britain and USSR, formed an alliance due to which Hitler had to face defeat. After the war ended in 1945, the alliance still existed. But American President Harry Truman shared a news among the people, keeping Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin unaware of the conference, where he announced the successful testing of nuclear weapons. Within a few weeks, in August 1945, the US dropped atomic bombs on two Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan had to accept defeat. Stalin was already aware of America's atomic project. That is why when he heard that an atom bomb has been dropped on Hiroshima, he reacted to this news with great caution. Reacting to the atomic bombing of the US, Stalin called it against humanity. He also said that now America will use its atomic bomb against the USSR as well. However, their fear was justified because the US now had the atomic bomb, which made the Soviet Union fear that the US would definitely take advantage of this. That is why the USSR also joined the struggle to make its own atomic bomb and finally tested its first atomic bomb in 1949. Due to two consecutive world wars, the condition of all the countries around the world was very bad. In such a situation, America and the Soviet Union emerged as the most powerful countries in the world. After this, the competition to become the most powerful started between the two, and the Cold War began. Not only this, during the Potsdam Conference held in 1945, the Soviet Union was angry about the boundary of Poland, which became one of the many reasons for the Cold War. Soviet Union leader Joseph Stalin considered the US's step to stop the spread of communism ideology all over the world as a sign of the coming war. As American President Truman had already taken a pledge to save all the countries of the world from communism by making the Marshall Plan. Similarly, the USSR also criticized the American dollar economic system by introducing the common form and showed its support to save the communist countries from capitalism. Not only this, due to the increasing influence of America, the USSR divided Europe into political boundaries and named it Iron Curtain. This wall divided Europe directly into two parts. On one side was the USSR supported Eastern Europe, and on the other side was Western Europe, which was influenced by capitalism. During this time, the Berlin Wall was also built. After its demolition, it is seen as a memorial of the Cold War. During this battle, neither of the two countries declared direct war against the other because they knew very well that both had the capability of atomic bombs, which could cause a lot of damage to each other. For this reason, this became the first war where the use of weapons was seen very little. With the end of World War II, communism was spreading all over Europe under the leadership of Stalin. The era of forming organizations by combining small countries had begun, and it started first from Europe. While most of the countries of Western Europe joined the USA, most of the countries of Eastern Europe joined the USSR, and that is why it was later named Western and Eastern Alliance. The only aim of Stalin's life was to promote communism. On the other hand, America was also aggressively promoting capitalism. Meanwhile, the countries of Europe were looking for their own alignment. But the situation in Berlin was different because Germany was divided into Soviet-occupied zone and American-occupied zone. In those days, Berlin divided Germany into Western and Eastern Berlin. In order to exert his full influence on Germany, Stalin closed all the airlines, roadways and canals connecting Western Berlin in 1948 so that the people there would surrender. In order to help Western Berlin, America took the help of aircrafts and helped its allies through cargoes for almost 1 year. This act of America was named Berlin Airlift. Although Berlin was saved from starvation, the whole of Europe came to the brink of war after this act. After this act, the Cold War took a different turn. NATO was formed in April 1949. It included the United States and most of the countries of Western Europe. This organization announced that according to NATO's Article 5, if any country attacks NATO members, then all the other countries will fight together. This kind of pledge of NATO further fueled the Cold War. In the midst of the fervor of the Cold War, Asian countries were also getting scorched. A similar situation arose in Korea as well when America and the USSR established their respective dominance in Korea. In such a situation, North Korea was formed with the support of communism, while South Korea, influenced by American capitalism, formed its own country. In such a situation, the battle between communism and capitalism ideologies also took place in Korea, in which no one won or lost, but millions of Korean people definitely lost their lives. In this war, North Korea was supported by Stalin and Mao's communist government. On the other hand, South Korea was supported by USA. Both wanted that they alone should rule the whole of Korea. From 1950 to 1953, Korean War took place where North Korea and South Korea were fighting to invade each other, due to which lakhs of people were killed and both the countries had to suffer a lot. After some time, Soviet Union also formed Eastern Alliance, which was named Warsaw Treaty. It was formed against NATO in 1955. Europe always remained the center of the battle of these superpowers. Both the countries used their brain and strength to bring these small countries with them. Where on one hand Soviet occupied the countries of Eastern Europe. On the other hand, US formed SEATO, i.e. Southeastern Asian Treaty Organization, and CENTO, i.e. Central Treaty Organization, in the name of alliance. Seeing America doing this, Soviet Union made good relations with China, North Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq. These two superpowers also had their own benefit behind doing this. For example, Arabian countries like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq have huge amount of oil and natural resources which could strengthen them economically. At the same time, to keep their army all over the world, these countries had to take help from smaller countries. During the Cold War, many such situations arose when both the countries came face to face. Many wars were fought during this war. Like the Korean War between North Korea and South Korea from 1950 to 1953, Berlin War from 1958 to 1962, Congo War in 1960, and then Vietnam War, and many other wars took place in which both the countries were standing against each other. Both the countries were trying to scare each other with the power of missiles, and during this time, Cuban Missile Crisis happened in 1962, due to which an atmosphere of war started developing in both the countries. Because the US saw the Soviet missile base in Cuba, which was 90 miles away from Florida, and the US President John F. Kennedy demanded the removal of these missiles and considered this Soviet behavior as a sign of a nuclear strike. Realizing the seriousness of this matter, an agreement was made between the Soviet Union and the United States, according to which the USSR removed its weapons from Cuba. In return, the US did not invade Cuba. Now both these countries had understood very well that giving a threat in the name of nuclear weapons was not a wise thing. That is why they signed 3 treaties in 1960: Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. After this, different treaties were signed for many years to come so that these countries could not use dangerous weapons like nuclear weapons. For example, the first Limited Test Ban Treaty, LTBT, was signed on the 10th of October 1963 in Moscow, where America, Britain, and Soviet Union signed this treaty. According to this, any bomb testing which has an impact on the environment should be stopped. Second NPT Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. This treaty was signed on the 1st of July 1968 in London, Washington, and Moscow. But it was implemented from 1970, and from 1995 it was implemented for eternity. According to this treaty, all the countries which were possessing nuclear weapons before the 1st of January 1967, like United States, Soviet Union, Britain, France, and China, are allowed to keep atomic weapons, and other countries are prevented from acquiring these weapons. Third was Strategic Arms Limitation Talks SALT 1. It started from November 1969, where Soviet Union leader Leon Brezhnev and American President Richard Nixon signed 2 agreements in Moscow on the 26th of May 1972. The first was the Anti-Ballistic Missile ABM Treaty, and the second was the Agreement on Limitation of Strategically Lethal Weapons, and both of these were implemented from the 3rd of October 1972. The fourth Strategic Arms Limitation talks were started in November 1972, where American President Jimmy Carter and USSR leader Leon Brezhnev signed a second agreement on limitation of strategically lethal weapons in Vienna on the 18th of June 1979. The Cold War was not being fought only on the economic front, but the USSR and the USA were competing to prove themselves better than each other in every matter. In such a situation, how could they stay behind in the growing technology and space race? In 1957, the USSR launched Sputnik 1, which was an artificial satellite and was the first man-made satellite. Of course, USSR considered it as the crown of space conqueror. After World War II, Soviet Union successfully launched its first man-made satellite in space. Now America saw it not as space science development but as weapon advancement. Both the countries now started competing to make surveillance devices and strong weapons using technology, so that when the time comes or in the condition of war, one country does not overpower the other by using its space satellite. After the satellite launch of USSR, USA started feeling that USSR has become much more advanced than USA in ballistic missiles. And if USSR ever attacks USA, then USA can become very weak. In this way, views gave birth to the missile gap theory in those days. Although USA was still far ahead of USSR in terms of missiles. But this space-turned arms war forced USSR and USA to make more and more weapons. By 1960, both had made thousands of warheads for their defense. After this, in 1962, USSR placed its warheads in Cuba, the information of which was received by American intelligence, and in this way all these weapons were removed from Cuba because after the missiles were found in Cuba, a lot of tension had been created between USA and USSR. But this agreement was done peacefully and it was named Cuban Missile Crisis, which was a byproduct of the armed race. Soon in 1969, the US made its name famous all over the world due to American astronaut Neil Armstrong, who took the first step on the moon, with which America accepted its victory in space and ended the space race. The Cold War was still going on. Both the countries were producing weapons in large quantities and were supplying it secretly. Somewhere in the minds of both the countries, there was still this doubt that in the coming time this war may have to be fought with weapons, due to which by 1980, the count of nuclear weapons in both the countries reached thousands. While the United States had about 23,000 nuclear weapons, the USSR had 39,000. India also played an important role during this Cold War. Being the leader of the non-aligned movement, India prevented many newly independent countries from falling into the hands of superpowers and also kept itself away from the dispute between the two countries. India used its diplomats and ministers as mediators to normalize the situation during this war. An example of which was seen during the Korean War in 1950. The first effect of this war was seen in the face of bipolarity, where many countries around the world were divided into two parts. One part was of capitalist America. The other part was of communist USSR. The second effect was that many countries did not trust other countries. The Second World War had ended, but there was still no peace in the whole world. Due to the increasing effect of the Cold War, wars kept happening in different parts of the world, like the Korean War and Vietnam War. The third was arms race and militarization. Both the supreme countries were engaged in making more and more powerful weapons to humiliate each other, due to which the money which was to be used for social economic development started being used to make weapons, which had a direct impact on those countries where this money was to be spent. The fourth was the formation of military alliance. Both the countries together formed organizations with many small countries. The only thing that was that if any country of the opposite organization attacks any one of these countries, then it will be considered an attack on the entire organization. In such a situation, the US created many groups like NATO, SEATO. At the same time, the USSR prepared the Warsaw Pact, which included many countries like Albania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia. The fifth was rapid decolonization, according to which the Soviet Union helped all those countries which were enslaved by the Western countries, and with the help of Russia, many third world countries got independence. Not only this, after this USSR and America extended a helping hand to these countries and also made some offers to these countries, like providing their military forces, becoming a part of their economic system, and supporting the United Nations. The sixth and last was the impact on the decision of United Nations. During this war, United Nations used to take any decision on the instructions of both the supreme powers and not on the basis of merit, due to which both these countries used to take decisions according